Welcome to Deep Dive. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Tania Seary. Tania, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin.
So Tania, where are you calling in from today?
Today I'm in London, very sunny London. So we're having a great summer here.
Very good. So Tania, you founded an organization called Procurement. Not procurement, Procurious, I should say.
Actually, no, Kevin, you're right. I did find procurement. I found it.
You are the inventor. Well, talk to us about your organization, Procurious.
Well, look, Procurious is the world's first online network for procurement and supply chain. And really, it was developed out of my experience of moving around the world and trying to keep connected with my network, which, as we know, is not easy. So what we did probably 5 years ago was set up something that's quite similar to LinkedIn, has a lot of the same functionality, but is just for procurement and supply chain. So today we have over 35,000 members. We have a lot of people coming in, sharing and reading information about and being able to see each other and actually connect.
Ah, that's so interesting. So 35,000 procurement professionals. And what kinds of things would a procurement professional get by being part of your organization?
Well, basically, a lot of it is about connecting with people who have similar experiences as yourself. I often say that being in procurement and supply chain can be a very lonely place because you might be the only person managing your category in your industry in your country. So being able to connect globally allows you to find someone who's in the same situation as you and hopefully reach out to them and share, learn from each other. But also, of course, today we talk a lot about influence and how that helps your career as well as your network. So this is very much about career development for professionals.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So you and I met at an SAP event.
We
did. And I think it was an SAP Ariba event. And I was just so interested to know how you created it. What is the backstory of it?
Well, really, the backstory is my career. I mean, I basically am Australian, so this accent is from Australia, and I've been very fortunate to work around the world. So I started my procurement career in the US. I went to Penn State and finished my MBA there, and then worked for the Aluminum Company of America, Alcoa, when they were really just starting their leveraging of their categories. So I was sort of in that first wave of professional procurement professionals. So we leveraged, we did reverse auctions, we implemented e-procurement technology, then we moved into the marketplaces. For those of you who are around in the 90s, this will all be very familiar. But what I learned was the power, particularly in large companies, of bringing all the business unit presidents together face to face and helping them share and learn. So we did a lot. We had 22 business units in that company. We would bring together the CPOs of each of the business units every quarter and help them learn from each other. So my experience was very much a face-to-face collaborative learning model. When I moved back to Australia, I decided to start my own business, and then I started my own roundtables with Australia's leading companies. So my business there is called The Faculty, and we currently have 34 of Australia's largest companies face to face. When I moved to London, I thought, how do you scale this? And that's really where we started using the technology.
Oh, very good. So I was just visiting your website, the Procurious website today, and you have so many resources for procurement professionals. So that's phenomenal. Now, when did you found that?
4 or 5 years ago. I think we're 4.5 years old. So it's still a baby.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So talk to us about what resources are available to a procurement professional.
Well, we have a discussion board where people can ask questions and the community answers it. We have a community feed where people can post and share information. We have the profiles like LinkedIn where you can actually look at your network and see what their experience is. We have a lot of videos and e-learning materials there for people, news, and all the events. And one of the things we really revolutionized was digitizing procurement events. And some of your viewers might have heard of our Big Ideas Summits. And that was really a big idea 5 years ago to really, I'd been to, being in the profession for 20 years, I've been to a lot of procurement conferences, and I really wanted to create something edgy and new and was about the next wave of procurement, and we're calling it Procurement 4.0 and Supply Chain 4.0. And this is what Big Ideas is all about, is innovation. What is the next step for our profession? So we've been very lucky to have IBM and SAP Ariba really behind us, because they are sort of pushing the boundaries of what procurement's going to look like into the future, and supply chain, of course. And they've been big supporters of ours, which has been very heartening, being an entrepreneur, that we're onto something.
Oh, that's so fun just to hear your backstory. So talk to us about what you see as some of the most innovative developments or most interesting developments within procurement today.
Well, definitely this whole story about digitization. I mean, we've been following the AI and the cognitive story, and blockchain. I think I'm a huge proponent of blockchain. I think there's so many huge opportunities with that. But I think what we've seen in the last 3 years is everyone was saying, what is it? What does it mean? And now, I think a great US professor said, AI is the next electricity. Soon we're not even going to think about it. It's just going to be in everything. And I know I've probably been talking about it a bit longer than everyone else, but really that's where I see it now, is all the technology we use is going to have AI in it. So we're really back to assessing the technology on its merits and what it can deliver. I don't think we all need to get too hung up on what's happening in the background as much as what's the value it's going to deliver. And certainly there are people pushing the limits in that area, but I think still for procurement and supply chain in a lot of areas, it's about doing the do. And it's about really managing that tail spend and getting the operating model right. So I think we've got to appreciate that everyone's sort of somewhere on the spectrum or the continuum. And while some people might be pushing the limits on digital, others are still struggling with the basics.
Interesting. And now you and I have heard and read a lot about what some companies are doing, where they're wanting to really use the procurement process to make social statements. What do you see around there today?
Oh, I just think this is, a fantastic aspect to our profession. And let's face it, every dollar you spend can be a dollar spent for good. And I think that is absolutely the case. And I've really been passionate about this probably for 7 or 8 years now. Initially, I was trying to encourage companies to really invest in social enterprises and invest the dollar in companies, and was particularly labour spend when we first got started with social enterprises. But now, of course, that's just opened up, where we have to look at the full gamut of issues. And I think a lot of companies obviously being signed up to the UN Global Compact has been a huge initiative, and to look at that whole wheel of areas where procurement can have an impact. And I think that it is one of the huge benefits of the role, is that you do touch so many aspects of business. And a lot of our peers in other functions don't really touch as many issues as we do. So I think actually this is a way of helping us grow into the C-suite, because we are thinking about all these external issues, and it's something that'll be perennial. And if we can master it, it will actually be one of our major roles. I mean, already today we see CPOs also being called the Chief Sustainability Officer. And I think this could be a way forward for us.
That's fascinating to me, because there's hundreds of millions, probably billions and trillions, absolutely going through these supply chains. And instead of just going through in a neutral fashion, you can actually start making choices on who you're going to purchase products from based upon their sensitivity to the environment and to social issues and things like that. So you can get you can use your spend for multiple good purposes. I think that's a fascinating development.
Oh, exactly. And it's a huge power. It's a huge lever that business has today. And procurement and supply chain have their hands on that lever, and we can really pull it. Of course, the challenges are getting the transparency in the supply chain, actually knowing what your risks are. And because everyone is so resource constrained, actually being able to focus on where the most risk lies is the key. And I think that's how technology is going to help us. I've been saying this year that the more human we become, more technology we're going to need. And what I mean by that is the more we care about these sustainability and people and economic environment issues, we're actually going to need technology more and more, because, if we think back 30 years, all we were worrying about was price. But now these are multi-variable, multi-factor decisions that we're trying to make that one person alone or one spreadsheet can't handle. So we're really going to actually need technology to be more sustainable, to procure with purpose, to be more mindful with our supply chain. So it's quite an interesting sort of, dichotomy.
While you were speaking there, Tania, I was thinking there's probably a story for blockchain and distributed ledger technology and all that to help trace and track this stuff from beginning to end.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the huge benefits the blockchain can deliver is, actually sourcing and tracking from food miles to, who's contributed the labor. I think a lot of people are looking at it that way.
To me, it's so interesting. Who would have thought that procurement could actually lead, everything from social justice to environmental issues to everything else? It's like rising from kind of the background and becoming one of the forefront advocates for good.
Yeah, but I think the important thing is, yes, I can see us rising to the top, but we've really got to focus on our soft skills. More than ever, our influencing skills and our communication skills, being able to build relationships are going to be really important, because when all this technology is, fully implemented and developed, it'll be our humanness that is going to help us win the day. And we're going to have to negotiate within this huge ecosystem of suppliers and business partners and really be effective. So I think that's the thing. Everyone says, oh, should I get a degree in data science? Well, maybe, but also remember that you're going to need those influencing skills, and it's very important that procurement and supply chain professionals continue to develop themselves in that way.
Oh, absolutely. So talk to us, Tania, about digital transformation and kind of where things have evolved within procurement and what you find most interesting.
Well, look, I find it all very interesting. And, we've been saying this is our moonshot opportunity, all these new technologies, sort of a new trajectory that will get us out of this transactional malaise, as I call it. We've been complaining about it for years. We want to get out of the procure to pay death spiral and sort of have a seat at the table and be a trusted advisor. And all these tools will definitely help with that. I think just a lot of people are struggling getting out of their current, business model and getting on top of things. And everyone's so resource constrained that actually choosing the right technology and convincing the board to invest in it is a real challenge. And let's face it, there's so many options out there with the technology. I think a lot of people are comparing apples to oranges, and, there's a lot of confusion out there. So I think that luckily the consulting community and others are there to assist. But I think for a while people were a bit gun shy of cognitive and all these new tools, but they will find a way. But it's not going to be easy. But I think people have to take a bit of risk. take a leap of faith and just start trying some of these things, so that hopefully they'll be rewarded. And, you know, if they get fired, as I say, hey, you can tell your next employer, I got fired for trying some AI or whatever. But I think, yeah, we've got to push the limits. Otherwise, we will be left behind.
Tania, is procurement more or less important today than in the past?
I think it's definitely more important. And I think this procure with purpose piece is the key, because we can save, you know, dollars and on the widgets and what have you. But if we have one of these supply chain shocks, this wipes off millions, sometimes billions of dollars of share price value or stock value. So those are the real issues that we need to be worrying about. And I'm sure it's the issues that keep CEOs and board members up at night. So from that perspective, because the global supply chains have become so distributed, so global, we have more risk than ever that something is going to go wrong. So I think from that perspective, it is more important. And as someone said at a Gartner conference recently, you know, companies are supply chains. Now, our marketing friends would probably disagree with that and say companies are brands. But, you know, we basically have outsourced just about everything that we can. Therefore, our products and our services actually are our supply chain. So I think we're more important than ever, but we're going to have to keep improving, developing our skills, our leadership skills, those influencing skills, as I said, to make sure that we stay at the leadership table.
So, Tania, when you read about procurement today, you're always hearing phrases like intelligent spend. What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm pretty excited about it because I've always wanted procurement and supply chain to be the smartest guys in the room. So for me, you know, I would hope that we're continually trying to recruit these super smart people. But for me, intelligent spend is really fascinating because I look at it from a 360-degree perspective. And we've sort of touched on a couple of things here, but I wanted to add something else for everyone to think about, which is, hey, the smart person doesn't want to be processing POs every day, do they? I mean, you want to get rid of all that transactional malaise, as I call it. You want to get rid of all that paperwork. You want to get rid of things that are non-value add in your day job. So introducing technology for those things that can be made autonomous or automated makes a lot of sense. I think intelligent spend is also spending your money where you're not going to have these supply chain risks or you're going to be sideswiped by a major issue. So I think that's the other way of looking at intelligent spend. But the other thing is, let's look at our work-life balance. And do we really want to be chained to our desk managing all these issues at 11 o'clock at night? I think the intelligent people today are actually working out how to manage their time and getting the balance right between their career commitments and their personal commitments. And for me, that's also what intelligent spend management is because we can look at, hey, when I'm working on the value add, I'm helping the world, and I'm also getting home to my family. So I think we should look at it as the whole spectrum because workplaces are changing, expectations of employees are changing. People do want to be working on things that count. And I think that's all part of intelligent spend. But I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that have their definition.
You know, the procurement department would not be the first place I would think might lead, lead the effort on social responsibility and being a good global citizen. But it seems to have emerged that way. Talk to me about that, and how did that happen?
Well, look, I think since once again, as we talked about, that's where all the supply chain risk is. And I like to be a bit of a protagonist at times. And, once I suggested, well, maybe we should get rid of all our people in corporate affairs and actually move those people into procurement because really if you look at the corporate affairs or corporate social responsibility team, they're worried about mitigating risk and supporting stakeholders that support the company's overall goal. But if you move those people into procurement and supply chain and actually had that many people actually looking after your supply base, looking after your supply chain ecosystem partners, you'd probably get the same impact. So I think that we really need to look at the opportunity of investing more in procurement and supply chain for that purpose, and really building the company's support networks, getting that visibility. And, you know, I think that it will really reap benefits. We haven't even touched on innovation as well. I mean, you've got risk on one side, but then actually your extended network can bring some of the best ideas to the table. So I'm sorry to anyone from corporate affairs or CSR who's listening, but I'd be putting my money, if I was a CEO, on the supply chain side of the fence, and really trying to maximize the value of my partnerships there, and have them leading the way.
To me, it just seems so clever that a giant company is going to spend billions in their supply chain and with their suppliers anyway, and then to look at those and say, now I'm going to start making some social decisions for the good of the planet, where I spend this money. So I'm going to look for suppliers not only that can deliver the basic supplies I need, but ones that take a position that's positive to the planet, Earth, and help us all. So which ones are having the most positive impact, have the best processes that are going to be environmentally friendly and all that, and saying, I'm going to spend my money in those places. To me, that's like using the same dollar or pound for multiple purposes, right? I'm not just giving it to you because I need your iron. I want to give that to you because I want your iron, and I want it done in the most environmentally positive way. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, and it's a huge opportunity for everyone. So I think there's another angle for this too, is the employee value proposition, the amount of engagement that companies who are doing the right thing actually gain. They attract employees, they retain employees, because people really do buy into this idea of purpose. And saying buy-in almost understates it, but it is a reason for working in a company, that you believe in its vision, its mission, and the way it conducts itself. So, you know, there's this whole employee retention and attraction part to this as well. So, I mean, really, why isn't everyone doing this?
I know. And, you know, you and I are very, very involved in the SAP ecosystem. And I know that's a banner they've picked up and are running with it, that it's not just about work. It's not just about the bottom line. It's also about combining those important things with the ability to do as much social good as you can in your day-to-day job.
Yes, and I think SAP is really to be recognised for this, because you don't have many technology companies coming out with a solid commitment to something as noble as this, and really is aspirational. I really think that SAP's caught our attention on this, and that everyone is listening, and purpose has really become part of the dialogue these days within our profession, but also just within life. You know, everyone wants a purpose, and everyone wants to bring their whole self to work. So you don't want to just come in and, you know, process and go through the motions. You actually want to feel like your efforts are being multiplied, as you said earlier. So I think they're really to be rewarded, because you and I have probably been around the block a couple of times, and it's not often that you have a technology company really investing in these kind of issues. It's usually all about the product and a bit of service, but this really is fantastic leadership position for them to be taking on.
Oh yeah, because if you look at in the past, I can remember early in my career when everything in business was supposed to be neutral or agnostic to any of the suppliers and all that kind of stuff. But the bottom line is there's been a lot of social injustice and environmental destruction under the name of getting the least cost product.
Yes.
And recognizing that if what you're asking your suppliers to do is give you least cost, and then recognizing the amount of destruction and social injustice and everything else that can come out of that policy.
Yeah.
And rather than that today, actually saying, no, I want to get the best business value at the same time as recognizing that we're all sharing this planet and we need to be doing this responsibly. Adding that responsibly and just, making sure that what you're doing is socially good as well. I think it's such a huge advancement in our profession.
No, definitely. And a lot of my early career was spent in mining. So this was always a big issue for us, the environment, community relations. It was something because mining companies have always required a license to operate, and they really need the community, the government's permission to be able to do that. So this is almost something that I've grown up with my whole career. And I think now too, with social media, consumers will report on you. It's not just the SEC or someone else, but you really cannot get away with anything these days. And consumers are really looking at food miles and the country of source for different goods. So there's also this whole go-to-market aspect and the consumer side of things as well, as being a sort of a market-winning product. Very critical.
Absolutely. So it's not just today, it's not just about the finished product, it's about all the components and materials and supplies that were brought into that. Because if you're the one buying resources, you have a lot of influence, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and that's the whole reason why procurement and supply chain should have the power within a large company, is they do have the spending power and they do specify what their suppliers need to comply with. So it's definitely where the power is. I think the issue is, though, as I said earlier, the transparency, actually understanding these extended supply chains. And then how do you manage that? And I think that people should give themselves, for example, if we look at the slavery issue, everyone does have slavery in their supply chains. I think we should just accept that, not accept that, but acknowledge that's the case. We can't say overnight, oh, well, there's not going to be any slavery, because I think there's very few companies in the world who could absolutely ironclad guarantee that. But what we have to do is make sure that we're all on a journey together to educate ourselves and eradicate these challenges as much as we can. And once again, the media plays a fantastic role in building awareness on these issues. But it's a journey. Won't happen overnight, but it will happen.
Oh yeah, that's powerful. So in addition to these, what are some of the other trends within procurement that you get most passionate about?
Well, look, I think the development of the professional's career, definitely. I think that we need to get the word out on how fascinating this profession is. And that's certainly something we've been doing at Procurious for the last 4 or 5 years. The profession is a little bit social media shy. They're kind of more introverted, perhaps, a bit more inclined to watch social media than actually participate in it. And I guess my message to people have been, share the stories. We want to see how interesting working in procurement and supply chain is. So share what you're doing on a daily basis, because some of the crazy things we all do, we've touched on them, people in lavender fields buying fragrances, people down mining pits, it's a fantastic role. And if people entering the profession at that early stage of their career could see how interesting it was, I think we would be attracting the smartest guys in the room, the best talent, but also to the C-level. I think we've got to show what we're doing to mitigate risk, what we're doing to innovate. And if we're silent, then we'll never be appreciated. So I think it's about building awareness. And I see some CPOs who do have file on social media, and I bet they're winning the game, because the next generation of talent wants to work for those sort of people. it's not so much about the brand these days. They want to work for influencers, people who have their own network that they can then tap into. So I think, yeah, my unique view as a social media proponent would be that I think we need to get online. Get connected, get ahead. That's what we say at Procurious,
All right.
because it really is a career.
And who doesn't like to spend money and do social justice?
Exactly. We should just put that as our tagline. Spend money, save the world.
So let's look forward into the future. And what do you see as some of the most interesting developments that you expect to come out over the next 5 years?
Well, look, I think our roles are going to change totally to what we see today. I think we definitely, potentially will have less people in the profession, but I think they'll be doing more interesting roles. So I think all this technology hopefully will take away a lot of the legwork, a lot of the sort of paperwork, and we will be left with these professionals who are commercial negotiators, trusted advisors, people who can manage this sort of network of interconnected suppliers and stakeholders and really drive commercial outcomes. Also, advise the business, connect the dots. So, but I think that'll happen in a lot of professions. Once again, all this transactional work will disappear, and I think there'll be new jobs that appear. So I don't think that having less jobs is going to be a big issue, because the profession's going to get more interesting based on the things that we've talked about. The extended supply chain, the risks in that, being able to, demonstrate that we can manage those supply chain complexities, and then the whole business of being a business, the brand, the innovation, the growth. Those are all things that our profession can contribute to. So I think it's going to be super exciting, particularly when you think about consumers wanting everything tailored on demand. It's going to spark a whole new generation of requirements and agility. So I think the future is really exciting.
Oh yeah, and I'm just so excited about the idea that you can use the same money you're spending in the supply chain, you can use it for so many different purposes. You can use it just to deliver a good product and run a good business, but then you can say, but at the same time, I'm going to use that same spend for things that are going to make the planet a better, safer, healthier environment.
Well, that sounds like your definition of intelligent spend then, Kevin. I think you've just defined it yourself.
All right. Tania, I want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kevin. It was lovely, and I look forward to seeing you again shortly.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining.